Hey, Robert, how are you today?
Hey Noah, I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing good. Thanks. Well, today we're going to get into how you at DxTel sold a portion of your business while still maintaining control of the business. But before we do that, we'd love to get a little background. What is DxTel? What do you all do? And, how did we get here?
Sure. Yeah. So DxTel, I started about 7 years ago with my business partner, Eddie Andrews. He and I started the company as a really meant to be a marketing services company. So basically, a marketing agency firm, really focused on the rural broadband space. Um, we got into it probably about 6 months and then started kind of spotting some common challenges that a lot of our clients were having. And so we, at that point, started going down this path of, building software solutions that we could solve those challenges all, with one platform. So we started, and our first platform, which is the one we just sold, was Harper. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so I'm curious about that transition from agency to more of a tech company. Was there or is there still kind of a hybrid of acting as an agency while you were incorporating tech, or was it a kind of a hard, cutoff from one to the other business?
Yeah, no, it was a hybrid for quite a while, actually. And in fact, when we started with Harper and worked here locally with another firm, web design firm, Period Three helped us build out our original uh, Harper platform. Honestly, I'm not even sure I knew what a SaaS company was when that started. I was probably using uh, the incorrect terms for everything. And then it was really kind of baptism by fire in terms of learning what it's like to build a software platform and maintain a software platform.
And so that was, you said you started the company 7 years ago. When was that you started making the transition into more of the tech side of things?
Uh, Really, with Harper, I would say we were a couple years into the platform, so probably 5 years ago.
Okay.
We really started enhancing the platform, working with Krumware to improve. We kind of took what we had from a content library into a more dynamic platform with a lot of other features.
Got it. And did you get connected with Krumware just purely through local relationships, both being in Colombia, or how did that initial uh, relationship begin?
Yeah, actually, we local connection, but we also were working out of the same co-work space in Colombia at SoCo. So
Okay,
it was, I guess, true to a lot of co-work spaces missions of connecting
right.
companies. That's exactly how it happened.
Yeah, no kidding. That's we'll have to figure out how to market that, right? That is the one of the big value props of co-working, and it doesn't always happen in my experience. You make friends or whatnot, but to actually, partner with a business that is in the same space and in your case, in Crumware's case, years later, still to be having a fruitful and mutually beneficial relationship. I don't know how rare it is, but it's rare in my experience. So yeah, we'll have to figure out how to get SoCo some marketing out of that as well. So okay, you met Crumware. You knew you needed help, I guess, being newish to technology, and so the team at Crumware helped you to build out Harper, and then kind of what was that journey like from initially building out Harper, and then just a couple or a few years later being able to exit the business? Was there I guess from a planning perspective, was that always the vision, or how did that kind of come to be that you would sell it off?
Uh, that was always once we started building the platform. Then, certainly I think outsiders kind of planted that idea of, with most SaaS companies, the purpose is to build it up and then eventually sell it. And I think that's the time that really I started leaning a lot more on Krumware in terms of, knowing that at some point I was going to want to sell this platform. Obviously, any buyer was going to have a lot of questions about how things worked and if they worked and things like that. And so, that was a completely new territory for me. So that was, I think that's really when I probably started, like I said, leaning on relying a lot more on Colin and team at Krumware to kind of help me figure out what I needed to do to get to that point of having a solid platform that was, able to be sold.
Right. And when you say able to be sold from a tech perspective, are you referring to like the technical due diligence and an acquirer actually coming in and looking at that side of things and making sure, the software product was at a certain level of quality that they would expect, or are there other aspects to that that maybe I'm not thinking of?
Yes, certainly that piece, and also just little decisions being made along the way, such as scalability. Making sure that it was everything was developed in a way that was going to be scalable, because obviously, if you're looking to sell it, you need to scale it pretty quickly.
That makes
Um,
sense.
and so, things like that, and even making decisions about different plugins to use or not use, and when to build something custom, and have proprietary pieces in there. Again, big issues when you're looking to sell down the road. So it was just beyond just doing the work, more kind of helping me make sure I was making the wisest decisions at each step of the way.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Having been in your shoes of building a software company and the software itself from scratch, yeah, there are just kind of an infinite number of small decisions being made all the time that it's hard to even describe all of them. But yeah, well, there's so many decisions of, do we use this or that, and how do we know? How do we decide? And um, so I could see how, you know, in addition to just uh, in addition to the hands-on software development, also the consulting and, having someone that's been through the building before to ask those questions and get an opinion of, what are the trade-offs if we do this? Are there pros and cons if we do that? Are there pros and cons? I'd imagine um, that's a lot of what you're referring to. And um, what I was also wondering is, what are those things you learned along the way where maybe, at the tail end of this process or the lifespan of Harper under DxTel, what are the things that you feel like, you started doing better or kind of realized, you weren't doing initially from a tech perspective or documentation perspective, or, what are those things that changed along the way?
Yeah, I learned a lot of lessons. Unfortunately, it was a lot of lessons of things that I should have done, uh, in the past. I think with Harper, we started out. It was I probably made it more difficult on Krumware by coming to them after the platform had been built and was in service,
Okay.
because then you're kind of rebuilding the car as you're going down the highway. Um,
Right.
we had existing clients and everything else, so a good bit of the work was done in a way to make sure things continue to run smoothly, but building those enhancements on top of it. So I think, that was a big lesson learned right there, and one I'm, doing now with a new platform. And, it's a whole lot easier to start from scratch and do it right from the beginning. Um, so
Yeah, isn't it amazing? I can't tell you how many times I've seen this firsthand, making those mistakes myself, or talk to others who have made it. But it's just, for whatever reason, it seems like this is always the founder, entrepreneur journey when it comes to tech, is go fall on your face, make a bunch of mistakes, then figure out how to do. It
Yep.
seems like there should be a better way and not be required to make all those mistakes early on. But it seems like that is the most common journey I've heard for sure.
Yep. Absolutely. Um, so that, and yeah, you mentioned documentation. That is a big one. Making sure that everything along the way is documented, and um, all of the changes that have been made, why the changes were made. We went into, with our acquisition, it was a private equity firm, or a private equity backed company that purchased it. And in some ways it was great. I'm glad that was my first experience in selling a company, because it was it was much more detailed. The due diligence was much more than I had imagined.
Yeah.
And I just, like, looking back, if I had not worked with Krumware, if I had kept working at, with in-house folks and supporting it, and us just kind of doing it as best as, we knew how to do, that due diligence would not have gone very well. It was a pretty stringent process. So.
Yeah, and so that was obviously sounds like a bit of a surprise, but any other surprises that went differently than you would have expected, or anything that you think's worth sharing, having gone through that acquisition process that maybe people wouldn't expect as part of that diligence, or anything else that's involved with it?
Uh, there were a lot of surprises. I'm trying to think of software specific surprises. One thing that's not related necessarily to the development, but one big lesson I learned, with any founder, with any time you're getting a business up and going, you're taking anybody and everybody that wants to sign up, right? And so, you start out with this incredible flexibility of, oh, well, we don't
If
have
you'll
it in our
pay me,
budget.
yeah.
Exactly.
If
We
you'll pay
can't
me
pay that,
something,
or we can
yeah.
pay this. Sure.
Right.
Or, well, I want to try it out, so I don't want to do a long-term contract. And me with the brilliant idea of offering month-to-month contracts, you know, seemed great. And we kept people on board, and it wasn't a problem for us because we had a really high retention rate. But man, did that come back and really bite us in the end. So that's
In what
big
way?
lesson learned, not related to development, but month to month contracts.
Just in the valuation of it wasn't viewed the same.
Yep, valuation, and really beyond valuation, having to, as a condition of the deal, knowing that, okay, we've got to go get, you know, all of these month to months converted to,
Oh, okay.
at a minimum, annual.
I got you.
So that was one of those lessons learned, and it just highlights the fact that, it's really tough when you're in that startup mode, when, like you said, you're trying to sign up everybody you can, and you want to, make it work one way or the other. But, it's that lesson learned now of, there's some non-negotiables that you need to keep in place. Otherwise, it's going to make a difference on the other end.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I would also say there's a danger or a trap on the other side of it, which is potentially being too focused on the exit and not doing the right things early to be scrappy and just get customers, right? It's like there's got to be somewhere in between, because there's a reason that you say, okay, if you'll pay us whatever, we'll take your, you've got to do that to get those early customers. And if you're too, strict, or, oh, you won't pay me X, well, we just won't sign you up. I I wouldn't say I fell completely into that trap in my business, but I, in a way, wish I had known less about what we, were trying to do in the long run, and would have just said, you know, pay us whatever you will pay us, and maybe part of that's also my background in sales, and knowing the types of contracts I wanted to get that are typical in SaaS or software. And so, yeah, I think, your point's an interesting one, because it is an art, right? Like, there's no perfect balance of well, you got to be scrappy, you got to sign up customers, but you also have to be smart, and it's always that, give and take, and when do you start turning those screws and saying, okay, we've got our first X number of customers, so now we're a little bit more mature. Now we have to have those more strict processes or non-negotiables in place, and there's no well, there's a million. I was going to say there's no handbook for it. There's a million handbooks out there, but
There are.
they're all you know someone's personal take or experience, and never going to be the exact same as the process that any one company is going through. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's having said that, anything else that you would add to that in terms of that lifespan?
Yeah, certainly. There were other lessons. One thing, again, kind of being naive to the SaaS space when I got into this and kind of really stumbled into it, was not appreciating the support investment on the back end. In my mind, when I started, it was, you get a price to build the platform, and you say, okay, great. So I'm going to build it for $100,000, and then I'm off and running, and not really thinking about the fact that you have to maintain said platform, and
Right.
really budgeting for that and taking that into account, which goes back to building it in a smart, scalable way. Because again, learning from experience, it's 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 one thing to add features as you go along. What you don't want to do is have to go backwards and blow up part of the foundation and start rebuilding again. So I think that's a
Did you have to
big.
do that at some point?
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
had to blow up, in your words, blow up the foundation?
Yeah, a fair amount, several times. So that was big, and finding the right mix. I mean, for me, obviously, I'm on the podcast, so I'm a fan of Krumware.
Right.
Um, but having a firm like that to lean on, I over the years, not necessarily with Harper, but I tried different models of, um, you know, outsourcing. Worked with one company that had all offshore talent and one person here working it, that would manage, and that didn't really work for me as well. I think it works for some people, but for me, I needed a little bit more hands-on consulting. Um, so I went the other direction and ended up with in-house developers on staff, which provided plenty of feedback, and I could just sit and ideate and have them build stuff. But what was missing there was the structure and the guidance. And so striking that balance of, for me, being able to come up with ideas and talk them out and have someone, then a developer, because I'm not a technical person. I'm not a developer. I can have the ideas and a general sense of how I want it to work. So being able to provide that feedback in real time is important to me. But then I also learned you need, if it's just employees that you're doing that with, oftentimes they are not in a position necessarily to, or they're not empowered to say, that's a really dumb idea. You shouldn't do it that way. You should do it this way, or
Right.
that's not going to work. You need to do it that way. And so that's why, for me, working with Krumware, especially because, we're both locally based in Columbia, South Carolina, it works so well for me because, again, I can come up with the ideas and talk them through with the team and get a good reality check of, hey, this is the path I was thinking, but actually this path is going to be much more scalable and doable.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. And and I'm also a non-technical person by definition. And when I started my company, in hindsight, not having a technical co-founder was, I knew it was a less than ideal situation, but the the amount of trial and error and time lost because we didn't have that person and couldn't find that person. We kept, thinking we found the right person, and they didn't work out, or what. And, it's just a little bit different take on what you're saying, but the similarity being, a non-technical, non-code writing person, being able to, find that right team or person that can complement and take, the idea or the business side of what's being, described in the vision and execute on that. I mean, it on one hand, it's obvious. It's like, well, duh, yeah, of course you need that. But on the other
Right.
hand, like, it's not as easy as it sounds to find the right person or team to do that with.
No, it's not at all, and it it becomes a huge trust factor,
Yep.
because it's kind of like building a house, at least for me, because I'm not a construction person either. But with development, sure, you can. There's a million platforms to go find developers and
Right.
hire, um, but if you're not knowledgeable enough in that area, then I mean, everybody can sound like they know what they're talking about, right? And
Right.
unfortunately, with building a platform, it's very easy to get 10, 20, $50,000 into it before you as the founder realize this person doesn't know what they're doing. Or worse yet, they finish it up and then you go through a due diligence process and somebody completely tears it apart. So, that unknown is incredibly scary when you feel like you have this critical part of your business that is a black box, and you are having to kind of just trust people who are saying, yeah, you don't need to look behind the curtain, but trust me, it's all working. And that's where, again, working with a firm, working with Krumware, it's a lot easier for me to look at the website and look at past customers, existing customers, and get those, references and a comfort level versus somebody's resume that, I can't look at. So I think
Yeah.
trust
100%.
is a huge piece again. I think development for you, we're in the same position. I mean, when it's something that, as confident as we can be in certain areas of the business, there's certain areas that we're not. And that for me is one of
Right.
those areas. So,
Yeah. 100%. And in addition to the trust, I'd also add that, to your point, there's, no lack of uh, platforms to find developers, or there's no shortage of inbound LinkedIn messages or emails saying, we have, developers in these 10 countries. It's just constant. And to filter out that noise of, okay, there's a million developers out there, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of dev shops all over the world. Where do you start? How do you know, what is the right team? And so it's so overwhelming, uh, potentially, to even know where to start. And so what often happens is, well, I'll just kind of pick one and do my best to, do some diligence, and then you end up getting burned. And it's a really tough situation. And the other thing I was gonna say to that is, it's for anyone that's not gone through this process, or maybe not technical or not interfaced with these technical teams. It's not just about writing the code, because you really need someone at the, if not kind of CTO level, at least a architect, a solution architect that has, that 10 plus years of experience that can, translate some of that vision into, okay, here's the architecture, here's how we're going to, not just, okay, we're going to start writing code and boom, we got you a feature. Because that, that skipping that planning and kind of architecture decision making is where you really can start to go the wrong direction. Just, oh, hey, I got a developer. I told him the feature. He wrote the code. We've got the feature. Great. And
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
really not it. That's really
No,
not what it's
and I
about.
don't need to be the one dictating. That would be like a home builder, trusting me to be the architect. And, at the end, I would end up with a house that just looked crazy and was probably going to fall down.
Well,
So
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. The metaphor is actually quite good. Architects in both
yeah,
both
it's
cases. Yeah.
and needing that, I can come up with the ideas again and the broad application of it, but having that person translate and say, okay, really what you're talking about is you need a database in this.
Right.
And then that person then goes to the developers to build it. But it's that
Exactly.
intermediate step. And when you don't do that, it also comes back to price. I mean, it's so tempting to, when you're in that startup mode, to think that or believe that you've just hit upon this diamond in the rough and, oh my gosh, I'm going to get this thing built for 10 grand because I found this guy that my buddy knew. And
Right.
there's, it's, you get what you pay for. And I think in software development is huge. And I'm not saying you just you go with any estimate or quote, but when something is much lower than even you thought it should be, then that is a huge red flag.
Oh yeah, yeah, and for those of us that have learned the lesson and been through it, it becomes so obvious later. But man, trying to explain that to someone the first time, if I think about trying to explain that to myself years ago, or trying to explain that to you years ago, when you're staring at those, quotes that are so much lower, it's hard not to take the bait, and say, well, maybe, but let me just go down this path. It's so much, this quote's so much less, what could possibly be different about code? And,
Yeah. Code is
it's,
code, right? Yeah.
yeah, it's what it seems like from the outside. And so, yeah, it's, that's a conundrum, haven't quite figured out from a sales and marketing perspective is, for those folks that are starting this endeavor the first time, and you know we at Krumware or any other experienced team says, well, that's gonna, just be prepared, this is going to cost you $100,000, as a kind of baseline to ultimately get what you're looking for at the quality you're looking for. And they go, oh my God, I've got 20 grand to spend, and I know, you know, five other people who said they'll do it for 20 grand. It's hard to get that trust established early, that this isn't price gouging. This isn't us, you know, just trying to take advantage of you, but sometimes you gotta touch the stove, as the metaphor goes, and learn yourself that, you know, it's code is not code, like it's not all the same.
No, it's not. And that, I know we're bumping up against time probably, but to bring back what you were asking, I think one thing that has been important for me in Krumware, and Richie does an amazing job of this, is all the time tracking, which helps you not only looking back, but moving forward. So now you kind of see the hours that are spent and what they're spent doing. And it helps me prioritize wishes and things like that when it's like, okay, well, this thing that I thought was really hard, apparently it's not, it doesn't take that much time. But
Right,
this
right.
thing that was just like, oh, just blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah.
It turns
Actually,
out that's a 10-hour thing. So,
that's a good point.
and I haven't, Krumware definitely stands out in terms of the hourly reporting and making that available. And that's been
That's
a
good to
huge
hear.
thing for me. Again, and it plays into the comfort level and trust. So.
Right. Have that transparency of, when we say it costs this, here's what actually went on. It's not just, oh, it costs this, we wave a magic wand and it appears, right? There's
Yeah.
actual people, and those people didn't just, start coding yesterday. We only, I'll take a second to do the Krumware plug. We only employ, experienced senior software engineers, and even our most junior person is senior, compared to what would typically be seen as a junior person elsewhere, and they're all US based and primarily Columbia based, and it's not that there's anything about being US based that makes them better at being developers. Obviously there's high quality software developers all over the world, but in terms of the business side of things, and sometimes diligence and contracts and things necessitate that, or have different requirements or red tape if you are outsourcing these things. And so it's just
For
been
sure.
simpler for us to to employ everyone, and their employees, right? We don't have any uh, 1099 folks for the most part. So with the last couple of minutes here, would love to just talk about what's next for you, and kind of the the headline of selling a portion of your business while maintaining control. That is a little bit unique, of kind of selling off the product, but not the full company. So we'd love to hear kind of what's next for you and DxTel, and kind of how that plays out relative to the Harper acquisition.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the thing I learned about selling just part of the company is not to try not to do it again. So one of the big changes is splitting out. Because before we sold Harper, we had a company that had 3 platforms under the same company,
Hmm.
um, and that gets really tricky when you're selling part of it, because inevitably you have people working on all 3 platforms, and you have systems supporting one,
Right,
2, 3.
right.
Um, so for us, and for me specifically, yeah, we're actually breaking out our two remaining platforms, Fiber Homes, and then Fiber CX, which we are working with Krumware here, kind of at a MVP 2.0-ish, and building a brand new platform that goes underneath it called Agile. But yeah, breaking apart those platforms as separate companies, because I learned my lesson, and I think we can make it a lot smoother and a lot easier this time around.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, while it sounds attractive to sell a portion and maintain control of the company, in reality, I can see why the entity aspects, it's important to have an, a separate entity that's being sold, rather than try and carve these things out.
If nothing else, it will, for anybody listening, it will dramatically reduce your legal fees
Oh yeah,
when it
yeah.
comes to the acquisition time, because it gets a little complicated. So
Yeah, right. That makes sense. All right. Well, I think we cover everything. It's great having you, Robert, and maybe we'll circle back down the road once you're a little further along with Fiber CX and the Agile platform, and kind of talk about how that's going. But it's great having you today, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
sounds great. Thanks, Noah.
All right. Thanks, Robert.
Take care.
See ya.